Hi there, I'm Joanne Gigliotti. Thanks for visiting my studio. Since this is a Batik for Beginners class, we'll be using white acrylic ink in place of wax. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Batik. Batik is a process of creating art using a resist method of applying hot wax and then cold dyes and colors to cloth or other surfaces. It has a colorful, deep, and complex history, and its interesting journey through the world found its full fruition in the country of Indonesia. Batik was recognized as a cultural heritage by UNESCO. October 2nd is celebrated worldwide as World Batik Day. Here's the supplies you'll need for this video. Start out with copy paper or printer paper. Copy paper is a little bit thinner and printer paper is better because it's a little thicker. Also, we wanted white acrylic ink, which is a brand new supply. So go to an art store. Any art store will have it, and you can get a little bottle. They have 3 or 4 different kinds. I'll be using Liquitex, but there's other kinds that are good too. Watercolor paint, any kind of watercolor paint, even a kid's set if you have one. We're just learning right now. And natural bristle brushes. You'll need two for acrylic, maybe a thin one and a medium one, and one for the watercolor. And for that one, you need just something thick and soft. Then you'd have to have a big glass of water right next to you. And I could suggest some cotton balls. And I'd say a hair dryer, but that's optional. If you're anxious to get something done, I use a hair dryer. Well, the papers you've chosen, they're 8.5 by 11, are just regular size typing papers. But what I like about this is we're going to cut that in two for the first one, so you have a couple tries, and it's a good size because you'll have 5 by 7 and 6 by 9. Now we've taken the papers, and I'm glad to do two, just so that we can relax a little bit. And I don't want to see you use any paper or pencils. We've got the reason I'm doing this right this way is because I want you to loosen up and enjoy this. So we'll start out. See this what I got it for the ink, and we have Liquitex in this case. There I've gotten the watercolor set out, and I'm checking everything out, making sure it's all ready so that you can use it. And I have a little dish. You can take just a kitchen dish and pour out enough this isn't wax, it's Liquitex ink, and it's white, has to be white. So these are the brushes, and that's one that I'll be using for the big one. I'm using for the watercolor, but and you see the second brush, you can even get at a hardware store. Here I'm just wetting the watercolors because you always have to wet the watercolors first, let them kind of sink in a little bit. And I have some in a dish. That's probably the best thing to do is get ahead of time, dip those watercolors. Now we'll just begin. So you take the brush, dip it in the acrylic ink, and begin to paint. What I want you to make sure that you do, I want you to just start like this and kind of loosen up, because this is why you'll be able to just enjoy the experience. I don't want you to use a pencil or get everything ready so that you can have it all outlined and all designed first and then fill in things. That isn't this kind of work. This kind right now, we're just getting used to the supplies, and we're getting used to just the feeling of doing something. Your pattern, and you're continuing your design with different textures, or whatever you can do with the brush. That's what you want to do on this paper. So just thinking about things too much doesn't allow for a good piece of work. So I've done the acrylic on both papers, and right now I'm showing you the drying thing. I have just a regular hair dryer, and I think it's a good idea to dry it. You keep it a little bit away from the paper so that it doesn't burn anything, but basically it's a good idea. That way you can start to put your dye on it and your color on it. Now you can see that I'm going to start putting the watercolor onto the paper, and you'll see what the resist does. This is the exciting part, really. So you've done the work, and now with a nice soft brush, you dip in and you mix the paints. Just, you saw how I'm doing the watercolors. I'm not even like dipping into one. Um, so as you put the color on, the white acrylic ink is acting like wax, which is a resist, and it resists that color. So the color only takes where the wax wasn't, or where the acrylic paint resist wasn't. So what I'm adding here is some more color, because in between, if you have some circle areas that are like a little enclosed, you might be able to add a few things to it. When people are doing batik with cloth, they really they dip everything and then they boil the wax out. Here in America, we iron the wax out, but what we're doing right now is like really, real basic, but it's really it's much easier, but it's a lot of fun. So there's where you can start. We have the second paper, the one we started with, and you'll see what this design looks like. And this is always an exciting part, because you don't really know exactly how it's going to look until you put the paint on it. So here's watercolor paint on the paper, and the design starts to show up. And the darker, you could actually use like a really dark color, and that makes a big difference too. Here I've tried to get a little more action on there and done a little bit of other color. I started with the taking off, making sure, if you like all the dots, you can leave it there, but otherwise you can take the excess color off with the cotton. I use a cotton ball. I have cotton balls right there, and I have little Q-tips, so in case you're doing something real detailed. So this is the way the first design worked out. And I added a little color here and there. This one I added a little color with it, more than that. But it's kind of a nice thing to do, and it's always just it's exciting, and it gives you some pleasure just to see it and just to see it all work out together. So here we have our batik in a frame, a ready-made frame. It's nice if you have those around, or if you want to get one. It just makes you feel good that you have something done. And I think that you're going to really enjoy batik as we move along. I'll be doing other videos with a little more detail and more in depth, and we have stamps and tool to make things with a thin line. There's lots of things that we can do. So I want to make sure that I hope that you enjoyed everything. Thanks for coming.